Hey Artnerds, today we're going to play around with Strathmore's new black mixed media paper and Faber-Castell Polychromos pencils. So today we are rendering a bee on white flowers using Faber-Castell Polychromos pencils on this striking black paper. As you guys can see, I've already penciled in a sketch, and this isn't really so much of a tutorial as it is just kind of showing you guys just how cool this black paper can be when you're working with opaque media like color pencils or like gouache. You could also use opaque acrylics on this for a really nice effect as well, or even Posca markers. So you have all kinds of options when it comes to very dark papers like this. In the past, you guys have seen me use tone tan, you've seen me use tone blue. This is the first time I've really played around with a whole lot a black paper on this channel. I think I have an inking video where I ink with white and gold on black paper, but this is a fun opportunity to render a color pencil illustration. So I'm not really a color pencil artist. It's not really my preferred medium. I have some experience using color pencils that came from my undergraduate, where we use color pencils as an affordable way to do illustration. So I do know a few techniques, but to be quite frank, I find color pencils in general to just be too time consuming and too much of a repetitive motion to be comfortable in my hand. So for this illustration, what I did, since we're doing a bee, is I went ahead and I lightly colored in using the same sort of fur techniques that I would use on, say, a mouse or a rabbit, with the second to lightest yellow and the golden yellow. I also started adding some white highlights in using the white color pencil. So this paper doesn't have a whole lot of tooth. You may decide you want to spray a workable fixative on it just to give it a little bit more tooth before you start working with color pencils. When I'm working with color pencils, I prefer to work with papers that have a lot of tooth to them, so pastel papers. Now, some artists don't enjoy that because it does tend to eat up your pencils. So I'm going back in and kind of refining my highlights using the black color pencil. And since we're rendering black on black, it's really important to show the highlights because those are going to help define the forms. I'm also using a dark gray to start rendering the wings, since if you look at a bee's wings, you'll notice that they're kind of like tinted glass. They're translucent, but they've got a brownish tint to them. And they're also somewhat reflective. They have a bit of a sheen to them, so you're going to want to render the highlights as well. Now I'm using the lightest blue in the 24 color set, as well as the white, to render the little white flowers that the bee is collecting pollen from. So I began with the blue, rendering in my shadows, and now I'm adding in the white. And Polychromos color pencils are some of the nicest color pencils I've ever had the pleasure of using. They're rich, they're buttery, they're creamy, they have a good pigment load. So even though I said earlier that I don't really enjoy using color pencils as my primary medium, Polychromos are kind of the exception to that rule. If I'm going to use color pencils, I really want to use soft, buttery color pencils, and these are soft, buttery color pencils. I've also found that they are far less prone to snapping and breaking than, say, Prismacolors, which, as we all know, are break-a-palooza. So if you're using a high-quality pencil sharpener, like a Coombe pencil sharpener, and those are available at most art supply stores, you should have no problem sharpening your Polychromos pencils, and you shouldn't have significant breakage. I also want to point out that the lacquer, the nature-friendly green lacquer that they use, is very comfortable in the hand. And since they have round bodies, they're much easier for me to hold. And you guys can see how these color pencils, I haven't done a whole lot with them, but they really pop on this black paper. And I would say that the Strathmore black mixed media paper is similar in thickness and similar in paper surface texture to the tone tan mixed media paper and the tone blue mixed media paper. So if you have experience with those, you should be very familiar with this as well. Now in the future, I do plan on putting this paper through a watercolor test because some black papers are dyed black, and if they're dyed black, sometimes the dye will reactivate when you add water on top of them. So what you want is a black mixed media or a black watercolor paper that is made either with dyes that have been fixed to the fibers, pigments that have been fixed to the fibers, or you want something that's made out of black wool. So for this composition, I have little white flowers down at the bottom as well as the upper right corner. And I'm using white, the lightest blue, a very light green, and the middle green to render the centers of these flowers. And I'm pulling in highlights with the cooler yellow. And I do apologize for not knowing the color names off the top of my head, but I think it might be more useful for you guys if I just describe the colors rather than go by color names, as color names vary from brand to brand and it doesn't necessarily tell you much about the color it delivers. So as with most of the artist quality Faber-Castell products, these are part of the overarching Faber-Castell color number system. So a 1, 2, 3 in a Polychromos is going to be very similar to a 1, 2, 3 in a Pitt pen. It's going to be very similar to a 1, 2, 3 with the Albrecht Dürer markers or the Albrecht Dürer watercolor pencils. So color matching is very easy across products with this system. So if you like to work mixed media like I do, this is a really good way to ensure that your colors match. So to kind of break up the composition and add more visual interest, I have a couple of green stalks. These are from the flowers. And they're just cutting across the composition, and there's going to be a few leaves to help break up the composition as well. Now, this is a super small sample size. If you happen to have hands-on creativity at your local plaza, if you have a plaza in your area and they do hands-on creativity, you should be able to pick up one of these cute little black paper pads from the Strathmore rep. You can just mention that you saw it on Natto Soup's channel and that you'd like to give it a try. So I'm adding some shadow in with the phthalo blue in the set, so that's a cool blue-green, and I'm blending that out using the sort of middle blue-green. And for this image, I'm working pretty straight from reference. So unfortunately, I don't know what these flowers are, but if you guys know, let me know down in the comments below. This little bumblebee seems to be going to town, enjoying them. And you guys might notice that I draw bees a lot. They appear quite frequently in my Inktober's. And it's just because, you know, I realize that people don't really draw a lot of insects, and it's nice to be able to honor insects that contribute so much to our well-being, like bees and earthworms. So I've been trying to feature them more prominently in my art. So if you're not an insect person, I apologize. My intention isn't to creep you out, but I think bumblebees are beautiful. And anytime I see one in real life, I always cheer it on and tell them they're doing a good job. And hopefully depicting insects in a positive way, in a friendly way, will perhaps get people to think twice about killing them or calling an exterminator. So now I'm just adding in some shadows using our dark phthalo blue color pencil, and I'm going to start drawing the flowers up at the right hand corner. Now those flowers were somewhat invented in the reference photo. There were no flowers up there, but I thought it would help with the composition. And this is a sample for my Strathmore / Faber-Castell portfolio that I'll have with me for the hands-on creativity at the Nashville Plaza. I am super excited to be able to work with them. Working as a product demonstrator has been a long-term dream of mine, and this puts me one step closer. Of course, by the time you guys see this video, hands-on creativity will have passed, but you can always sign up to participate in the following year. It is free to participate, and they have all kinds of cool demos and samples and workshops. So I really think using the black paper with these opaque color pencils, I think it was a great choice. You guys notice I don't feel any need to fill in the background. You could if you wanted to, but I thought it worked really well with just having this golden little bumblebee, a few white flowers, some green stalks, and the black paper. So that's one of the pros of using toned and colored papers, is it provides a mid-ground. In this instance, it actually provides our darkest tones. So it gets you to think about color a little bit differently, which, you know, opens up new neural pathways and keeps you sharp. And as an artist, I know it seems like I do a lot of the same, but as an artist, I love doing new things and challenging myself, and I usually do that with playing with different art supplies, and the black paper was a much needed challenge. So I'm just kind of tightening up how I handled the fuzziness of the bee using the black color pencil, kind of cutting into our yellow, white, and golden areas to kind of create additional fuzziness. And then going back in and adding some further highlights on the little golden bee. So even with a 24 color set like this, you have a lot of options. A set like this is perfect for rendering flowers and insects. So you guys saw my workable spray fixative real quick. I apologize since this has been time-lapsed about 4 times. It's difficult to see, but it's Krylon workable fixative, and I sprayed that on and allowed it to dry for about an hour, and what that does is it gives the paper fresh tooth. It gives it a new surface, so I can go back in with color pencils and add sharper, tighter details. Now once you spray it, you won't be able to erase or blend prior layers. All it does is it gives you a fresh surface so you can pull kind of stronger whites or stronger yellows. All right, so that just about wraps it up. I want to thank you guys so much for watching this. I hope you found it helpful, useful, and inspiring, and I hope I'll see you guys again really soon. Have a great day, guys. Bye.